My name is Hillary Curtis. I'm a product manager for ArcGIS Enterprise. And I have with me Caroline Wright, lead product engineer on Enterprise as well. And we're going to be talking about distributed collaboration. So we've got 30 minutes. I know nobody's after us, so if we need to go just a tinge long, we might. I think we can probably take questions here after the session, or you can find us in the showcase. We've seen a lot of interest in collaboration, so we're excited to keep those conversations going. So I just wanted to do a really quick poll. I think that helps us be able to make sure that we're delivering the right information for you. So who is using collaboration now actively in production? Awesome. 3. What about those of you who know of collaboration vaguely but not using it yet? Okay. And anyone brand new? Cool. Great. So we have a good distribution. So we're going to touch on some of the concept of collaboration, so some use cases, why you would use the feature, and then we're going to actually get into a demo where we're going to demo some of the new features that are going to be introduced at 10.7. We'll also talk about the timeline of collaboration, so it was introduced at 10.5, and there's different features and functions at each release that you guys may need to keep aware of as you're collaborating with other deployments. So what is distributed collaboration? Essentially, it is a way to establish a trusted connection, that key term there is trusted, with other ArcGIS Enterprise deployments and with ArcGIS Online. So what does that actually mean? It allows you to easily share data and information, and this continues to be expanded upon. So we started with just feature layers and web maps, and then we introduced the ability to actually copy web mapping applications and insights items, things like that. So it allows you to take the data that you may be working on in Enterprise and extend it up to ArcGIS Online or with other Enterprise deployments. And these can be within your organization or outside of them. It uses the existing group sharing model, which hopefully a lot of you are familiar with, so that it doesn't introduce any brand new workflows, so that it's really easy to get up and ready and started. It also keeps data updates in sync automatically so that you don't have to manually export data and then import it into a new system or script that ETL process. All of that is done directly within ArcGIS so that you set it up, you share your items to a group, and that synchronization automatically happens for you. And I think the big value of collaboration is that it helps to provide this common operating picture of data and really make something visible across different systems so that other organizations, other departments, agencies can actually use the data that is your authoritative data. So that's kind of a synopsis of what collaboration is, kind of at its core. So there's lots of different use cases, many different patterns. I'm going to show you 2 here, but don't think that those are the only things that you can do. We've seen collaborations up to 60 deployments or down to just 2. So it's very variable. I think that's where distributed actually comes into the phrase, because you can distribute it across many, many different deployments. A really common use case that we see is organizations that have ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. And there maybe isn't that great of a connection between the two. You have siloed data in Enterprise, and then you have your ArcGIS Online users, maybe you have contractors or the public accessing data, but you need a way to kind of transport information to and from. So a good use case for this is actually managing your data in Enterprise and then copying it to ArcGIS Online so that you can use the scalability of Online that's very elastic, so that if you have people hitting that service, they're not actually hitting Enterprise because that data is fully copied. We also see this really common for field data collection workflows. So maybe you have people that are using Collector, but you don't want them to actually have to authenticate into Enterprise. You want to share a layer to Online so that they access that and their credentials are in ArcGIS Online. Maybe you have some firewall restrictions. So I want to note that, I think I kind of mentioned it, but anybody accessing that copied layer in ArcGIS Online is accessing a hosted feature layer there that's tied back to your Enterprise deployment, so the data is in sync, but they aren't hitting your Enterprise servers. And you can actually, I think this is a common question and potentially misconception, but you can copy both hosted feature layers from Enterprise and feature services that are pulling from an Enterprise geodatabase. So you can do both, and you can copy both of those item types. So another use case that I wanted to mention is just between enterprise deployments. So we see this a lot with different state agencies, even on the national level with agencies. And it's essentially a way that people want to share data across those different departments. Maybe they have their own siloed enterprise deployments, but they have really important authoritative information that they want another agency or another department to be able to see and use. So this is really common for emergency management too, but essentially just between different departments and agencies. Or you can also, if you have kind of a global deployment of enterprise, you can have those different kind of satellite offices being able to send information to a central one. So it can kind of go two ways. So here we have different departments that are sending data to a centralized one, but you could also reverse that and have a centralized one that maintains authoritative data. So this could be like a GIS department or a city that is pushing that out to other departments so that they can actually use that data. And you can scale to work with as many enterprise deployments as needed. So I'm going to rapid fire some key terms just to keep in mind. I know we can't cover really everything in this session, but as you're reading through documentation and thinking about how to architect your different collaborations, keep these terms in mind. So host and guest. This is essentially who creates the collaboration, which is going to be the host, and guest, which will join the collaboration. So in every collaboration with ArcGIS Online, Online is going to be the host. So if you're setting it up, make sure you start from ArcGIS Online and invite your enterprise guests. The host will also determine the level of access guests will have. So there's a lot of flexibility if you want guests to just receive items, just send items, or do both. So the host is the one that would determine that for all of the guests. Reference or copy relates to how you will share your feature layers. So in that ArcGIS Online scenario, I talked about copying data. So that's really ideal because you're actually packaging up all of that data and replicating it somewhere else. But you could also choose to reference it, which essentially gives your other participants this proxy item so that they can find it in their portal, but then they're going to have to log into yours to actually access that data. So you'll see this when you set up collaborations. You'll have an option of doing one or the other. So keep that in mind when you're setting them up. Do I actually want to replicate all the data, or do I just want people to see that it's visible, but then authenticate into my portal? Immediately or on a schedule is how frequently other participants will be able to receive updates to your data and new items that are added to groups that are part of your collaboration. So this is all something that you can choose as an administrator. And then lastly, a synchronization schedule. So if you choose to send items on a schedule, you can choose to synchronize that data between those groups between 1 and 24 hours. So this is really great if you're making a lot of edits and you want to send them just daily at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. You can have that granularity to choose how often those are being sent. So you'll set up a collaboration both from ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise within your online organization or your enterprise portal. You have to be an administrator to do this, and you'll go to Organization, Settings, and select Collaborations. Once you select the Create Collaboration button, it'll walk you through a wizard workflow so that you can invite your other guests and choose all those settings that I just talked about. So you may be kind of asking, all right, so a lot of data is being sent around a lot of different deployments. How do I organize this? What's the structure? We're continuing to work on ways to make sure that other users understand things that have been shared to your deployment and things that you've shared outside of it. So one way that you can do this is actually there's going to be a badge on every item that you've received from another deployment. We're going to introduce a filter for that so that you'd be able to filter for items that you're adding to a map or just searching in your content. But essentially the badge is there so that it says this item was received from a collaboration. We want to go even a step further to be able to identify which portal actually sent it to you so that that filtering is a little bit more robust. On the group page, you'll also be able to know which groups are participating in a collaboration. So this is just a snapshot of the whole group. But on the right-hand side, you'll be able to say this group is part of a collaboration, how often items are sent, and a little bit more information. So if you're sharing to a group, you can identify that it's part of a collaboration that way. So you can share a lot of different item types. This is definitely going to differ based on what version of Enterprise you're running. But essentially, you can share anything from layers to flat files like CSVs, web maps, web mapping applications. Caroline's actually going to demo insights items. So if you're working with insights for ArcGIS, you can actually copy models across different deployments. So let us know if there's something on this list that you need to be able to share. We want to continue to introduce these new item types at every release. So talking about the release highlights, so again, collaboration was introduced at 10.5, and this was between Enterprise and Enterprise. And at that time, you could only reference items. So the reason I kind of want to call this out is because if you're collaborating with another Enterprise deployment that's at a different version than you, you'll only be able to use the features that are available at that lowest version. So definitely keep that in mind, because I know you may be working with other deployments that may be running 10.5 if you're on 10.6.1, so just keep that in mind. So 10.5 was the first release of collaboration. At 10.5.1, we introduced the ability to collaborate with online, so at a minimum, you'll need Enterprise 10.5.1 to work with online. At 10.6, we expanded item types to be able to actually copy data between enterprises. So if you're interested in that workflow, make sure you're on 10.6 at a minimum. We also introduced some other kind of administrative functionality, so the ability to govern what happens to your data if you leave a collaboration or if it's deleted. Do you want your data to remain for your participants, or if you leave it, do you want all of that to be wiped? So a little bit more granularity there. And then also status reporting for administrators. So we got a lot of feedback. We did about a year of beta testing for this feature, and administrators were saying, did my item send? What happened? I don't want to have to call Caroline and ask her, hey, did you get this? So there's a lot more information for administrators on the status of your synchronization so that you can actually track, have things successfully been sent over. At 10.6.1, we introduced the ability to share web mapping applications. So this could be from configurable app templates, or if you use Web App Builder, you can actually copy that whole application, which is really common from Enterprise to online, so that the public can use online to actually use that application, but you develop it in Enterprise. The ability to synchronize data on demand. So I talked a little bit about that synchronization schedule, which started at an hour and went all the way up to a day. But maybe I've made an edit and I need to synchronize it now. Administrators now have the ability to hit that button and all of the data is synchronized immediately. So it kind of forces something that would automatically happen just in case you've made a lot of edits and you want other people to be able to access those. So at 10.7, which is coming out in end of March in a couple of weeks, we've introduced the ability to share insights items. We're also going to allow you to share hosted feature layer views, which is really common if you have secure data or data that you don't want to send the entire data set. You can create a view on top of that data so that you only share certain fields or features or areas of interest. So now that's possible to copy that data without actually sharing the whole source. The ability to pause and resume sync. So you may see a theme. People want to be able to control that synchronization. So maybe you're making edits, but you don't want them to be sent to other participants. You can actually pause the synchronization so that they're not receiving all of those ongoing edits. Or maybe you're making or doing system maintenance and you want to just pause the collaboration for a minute, but you still want other participants to be able to access that data, just not as real time as they would if you had that sync schedule going. And then I showed you the badge, so that's now more prominent, and we're going to continue to make strides in that. I think data management workflows are really, really important with collaboration. So if you're using it and have feedback on how we can help you work on the data management aspect, please let us know. But as you can see, every release, we're continuing to release more and more. So we really need your feedback to be able to continue. Yeah. Yes, there is. Yeah, so the question was, is there an ability to sync in real time? So kind of. So if you share by reference, everything, all the changes that you're making will be received in real time with your participants. the closest that you can sync in real time if you're syncing on a schedule is an hour. But further than that, the closest that you can get to pushing updates in real time is that sync on demand. So if you're syncing on a schedule, it's an hour. If you're syncing immediately, then people will be able to get the edits in real time.
Edits to the data.
I don't think you're on.
Oh. There we go. Can you hear me?
I think it's a little bit low.
Oops. Let's try that again. Alrighty. That better? Yeah. So if you're looking to synchronize your edits, once you've shared that initial feature service, those edits will only get synchronized every hour at a minimum. We don't have that concept of synchronizing edits real time. Mm-hmm. Did that answer your question? Okay.
We can talk later too. All right. So I'll turn it over to Caroline. We want to show you how to use collaboration in action. So she's going to demo how to share feature layer views and insights items across 2 deployments.
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. Yeah, so in this demo, I want to show you a couple of 10.6.1 features and 10.7. So as Hillary said, views are in 10.7 and insights items are in 10.7. But I'm also going to show you a web mapping application as well. And we introduced that in 10.6.
Can you guys hear Caroline? Okay.
Dodgy. Okay. Let's try that again. Better? Yeah. Okay, we'll just hold it there. So what I have on the screen here are 2 10.7 portals. And they represent a state agency and a city agency. So for the premise for this portal, I'm going to assume that at the state level and at the city level, they want to use permit and inspection data to analyze residential development trends. So that's our premise for the demonstration. So I've already gone ahead and created the collaboration. The state is the host. That's a term that Hillary mentioned in her demo, in her presentation, and the city is the guest in this collaboration. So if you'd like to see how I did that, you can come by the island and I can show you, or we have plenty of online resources that describe how to go ahead and create collaboration. But for the purposes of this demo, it's established. Both enterprise sites trust each other and we're ready to start sharing data. So what I want to do, I want the state to share authoritative data with the city. So the flow of data will be from the state to the city. So the city will be receiving data from the collaboration and the state will be sending data to the collaboration. So let's look at the first item that we want to share. Which is a view. So here I have a subset of zip code data for the state of Maryland. And what I want to do, I want to create a view of that data that just contains the zip codes for the city of Bethesda. So in order to do that, I can take that hosted feature layer and create a view from it. Let's see if I can type with one hand. So I click Create View Layer. What that is going to do, it's going to create a copy of that hosted feature layer. Once I have that view item created, I can then go and develop a query definition to define what I want to include in that view. So here I have a new item created, zip codes 2018 Bethesda. It's a hosted feature layer. If I look at that data now, I see that it contains the zip codes for a number of different cities. What I actually want to do is just create a subset of data that represents the zip codes for Bethesda. So I'm going to go ahead and open this data in the map viewer. I could also do this same task from the visualization tab here. Once that data loads, can click on here and you can see, yeah, I've got plenty of different cities associated with this zip code data. But I just want the Bethesda zip codes. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to set a view definition based on features. So I'm going to say, just give me the zip codes where the male city is equal to Bethesda. Okay. So once this saves, you'll see that I just have zip codes for Bethesda. So that's the data I want to share to the collaboration. I don't want the city of Bethesda to have zip codes for anybody else. I just want them to have their own zip codes. So this is a view. So when I share this data to the collaboration, I'm just sharing these zip codes. All the other data that was in that original feature layer is going to be stripped away. So what I also want to do is, well, let's come back to this. Let's come back to our content. And in order to share this feature layer view to the collaboration, I need to do one more thing. I need to make sure that it's sync enabled. Why do I need to make sure it's sync enabled? I need to make sure it's sync enabled so the system can create a replica from that data. So in order to do that, I'm going to come over to the settings tab for that view and enable sync. Once that sync is enabled, I can then share that data to the collaboration. And I do that simply by sharing that data to the group joined to the collaboration workspace. Okay, so we created a view from a hosted feature layer. We enabled sync on that view, and we shared that view to the collaboration. So that was the first work item I wanted to share. Now I want to come back and look at that data in the map again, and I want to create a web map, and I want to add that web map to a web mapping application, and then I want to share that web mapping application to the collaboration. So I'm just going to save this as a web map. Once I have a web map, I can then share that web map and create a web mapping application. I'm just going to use one of the basic templates that come out of the box. This isn't going to be a fancy web map, but it will demonstrate sharing the web mapping application to the collaboration. There's my web mapping application. Yeah, I can interact with it. Great. I'm going to close that. Come back to my content view. Now I see I have a web map and a web mapping application as well. I'm going to go ahead and share both those items to my group joined to my collaboration workspace. Great. Third thing I wanted to show you was sharing an insights item. So here I have an insights workbook. I've already configured it. I'm using residential trend data. I've created a basic analysis, and I want to share this as a model to my collaboration so that the city of Bethesda can open this model and they can plug in their own local data sets so they can analyze their own local community trends. So this data is using, this workbook's using zip codes and residential permit and inspection data. The city of Bethesda, we've just shared a zip code data set with them, so we know they're going to have that. And we also know that they have their own local community permit data. So I'm going to go ahead and share this workbook as a model. When I share this as a model, a new item is going to get created in the Enterprise portal. I come back and take a look at my content. I think it will get created here. There's my workbook. Oh, it actually got created here. So I now have this new insights model item. I already shared that to the group joined to my collaboration workspace, so it's been sent to the collaboration. So we sent a view to the collaboration, we sent a web map and a web mapping app to the collaboration, and we sent an insights model to the collaboration. So based on our access model for the city should have received 4 items. So now I'm looking at the City of Bethesda's portal. Here I have their group joined to the collaboration workspace. Let's go ahead and look at what we have in that group now. And I have 4 items. So those 4 items were just received from the collaboration. What I can see at this level is this new collaboration badge, so I can easily tell that this content was received from a collaboration. And I can see that at different views. So here I have my list view. I can also see that collaboration tab as well. So we're trying to make it easier for people to recognize what content has been received from a collaboration. So let's go ahead and look at our first item that we shared, which was the zip code data. So remember, we had a larger set of data. We created a view based on the male city being equal to Bethesda. So we just want this data to only include the Bethesda data. So let's verify that that's the case. So yeah, the male city is just equal to Bethesda. So this is good if you've got sensitive data and you only want to share a limited subset of that data to your collaboration. You know that just that data, none of the other sensitive data is getting shared. So that's good. Let's look at the other items that we shared. So we also received a web mapping application. Let's take a look at that. So what's going to happen here is this web mapping application, the configuration for this web mapping application came over, and the reference to the zip code data that I shared also came over. So I'm just looking at that zip code data for Bethesda. So the relationship between the zip code data and the web mapping application and the web map that's being used by this web mapping application was preserved. And our last item that we shared was the insights model. Let's go ahead and open that model. Now I'm using Insights 3.2.1 here. So when I open this model, it's broken. Why is it broken? Well, it's broken because it doesn't know where the data sets are. In the state level portal, I had a subset of residential and permit data that I used to create this analysis, but the city level doesn't have that data. But what they can do is they can look at the model view and they can go ahead and update the source of those analysis inputs. So I can come over here and I know that the city has their own residential permit data. So I'm going to go, actually, I need to come back and add that data to the workbook. So here's the city-specific data. I'm going to add that, and I'm going to add that zip code data that I received from the collaboration. These are the 2 inputs to this model. Once I have those in my workbook, I can go ahead and update the source. And once I update the data source, my model is now updated to use my local data sets. So here we are able to demonstrate that an organization was able to create a spatial aggregation model and share just that model to a recipient who could then plug in their own data and using their own data look for their own trends. We're also able to show that we were able to share views and web mapping applications to that collaboration, and that the relationship between those items were persisted when they were received by the collaboration recipient. So I hope those features will be useful to you. You could also have done this if you were in online. So with the March release of Online, we will have support for sharing views and for sharing insights items as well as web mapping applications. So this could have been an enterprise to online relationship, and the same functionality would have worked. So hopefully that's useful.
Thanks, Caroline. All right, I know we were over time, and thank you for staying. We wanted to wrap everything up by just giving you some tips and tricks for setting your collaborations up for success. So it seems kind of silly, but conceptualize what you want to do. So who do you want to collaborate with, both from an enterprise deployment and from actually a user perspective? What do you want to be sharing? How do you want to share items? Do you want to copy it? Do you want to reference? How often does data need to be updated for everyone, and why? So what are everybody's goals? So it's really helpful, I think, to actually go to the whiteboard or take a piece of paper out and really sketch out your workflows. If you model it based on your organizational structure or what you want to do, then it'll be really helpful. So you can see Caroline and I whiteboard a lot. And it always looks different.
I have to erase them quickly before she takes a screenshot.
So since collaboration uses groups, take care in naming your groups and your items. I think the badge is really helpful, but if you can say, Bethesda collaboration group, that's always really helpful for users as they're adding items. They know where it's going. And then communicate, know what version everybody is on. Get both administrators and users on the same page. Talk about the data that you will and you want to share. Make sure that you have kind of organizational buy-in before you just, I'm using your term, willy-nilly, start sharing items. So hopefully this was helpful to kind of give a perspective of what collaboration does, give you some tips. We have a lot of resources that are out on the blog site. We have a new blog that talks about different patterns. So it actually talks about 5 different patterns beyond just the 2 that I mentioned here today. Our web help and technical documentation definitely covers really in-depth workflows. If you have any questions, there's a really good FAQ on the web help site as well. We have a case study that we worked on with Three Rivers Park District in Minnesota. And we're also included some information in one of the white papers. So we can share these slides with you. They'll be on the proceedings website, but if you want to give us your card, we can send them to you. And nobody's after us in this room, so we can maybe take some live questions if you guys can hang around, or if you want to come up, we can be here for a good while. So thanks for your interest. Hopefully this was really helpful for you guys, and enjoy the rest of the week.
Yeah. Thank you.